Hey fellas, Dan here. Brad and I have been extremely busy with the last couple of weeks. So what we're going to do is give you guys a blast from the past here, one from the archives, and we hope that you enjoy. Make sure you come back next week and we will have new content ready to roll for you. Welcome back to Untaming Masculinity, the podcast where we tackle issues relevant to men and their journeys to reclaim their masculinity. I'm Dan, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend Brad. What's going on today?
Not much, man. It's early over here. Wife's out of town, so I'm just hanging with the kids. Hopefully today's going to be a big pool day. Go throw them in the deep end.
There you go.
Yeah. What about you, man? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, actually. I just booked a campground up in New Hampshire for a weekend getaway with my brother. I'm going to go up and do a little camping, do a little hiking, hit up some of our favorite mountains in the White Mountains. So it's kind of a place of nature therapy for me. So I'm really excited for that. That's next weekend.
Yeah, you were telling me about the campground. I was looking it up. It looks beautiful, man.
Yeah, it's a great spot, kind of very accessible to a lot of different places. I'm really excited. New Hampshire's got a special place in my heart. I used to vacation up there a lot as a kid, and then their mountains and just the trails system up there is incredible. So really excited. So today we wanted to discuss a topic that you brought up regarding building a personal code for yourself. So I'm going to let you jump in, start us off.
Yeah. So just to preface this one, we're having a conversation, and within this conversation, a lot of guys are talking about the importance of having a code, like a code of conduct, a set of rules by which you should live your life. And so few men truly have that. And those men who are successful tend to have one. And it tends to define every element of their lives. So in order to set the table for this, there is a small little book written by Jocko called The Code, the Evaluation, the Protocols, Striving to Become an Eminently Qualified Human. It's a really quick read. I'd suggest picking it up. For me, when I was creating a code, it actually set the foundation for how to get started. And I want to lead this off by quoting Jocko in this book. We'll go from there. So, the code. Without an objective, the objective will not be reached. Without a goal, the goal will not be achieved. Without a standard, the standard will not be met. Without a mission, the mission cannot be accomplished. Without an ideal, the ideal will never be realized. Without a clear path, the path cannot be followed. Yet we, as human beings, often go through life without any of these. And so we wander. We wander aimlessly, moving without making progress. Days, months, and years pass us by. Time is wasted, which means life is wasted. And potential is wasted. Our own potential squandered. Meandering through life instead of becoming who we could be, instead of attaining our highest possible manifestation of being, we simply become whatever we become. We fall short. In so many ways we fall short. But this need not be our fate. We can prevail over mediocrity. We do that by chasing the ideal. Our ideal. An ideal that we must define. An ideal that we must codify in no uncertain terms so we know what we are striving for. We must have a code to follow. So Dan, what does that tell you?
So I was thinking a lot about this over the last couple of days, and then especially when you were reading that. Most importantly to me, it means this is my check and balance system. This is my way of taking a look at my actions and comparing them to the man that I want to be. It's important to realize that the code of conduct or the personal code or whatever you want to call it that you're going to create is not the how of how you're going to get there, but it is the definition of what you're aiming for. And it is what outlines your do's and don'ts, your moral compass of sorts. So that's kind of where it is for me. I'd like to hear what you think.
Yeah, it's a moral compass. It's a defining characteristics of who you are. You know, he talks about our ideal. It's when I take a step back and I look at who I am and who I want to be, I need to have that defined. I need to have that outlined. I need to have that codified, to use this term, so that when I wake up, this is who Brad is. This is what Brad strives for. This is what Brad is all about. So that invariably when I fall off the path and I do something dumb, I have a bad week, I start binging on cookies and ice cream and all that crap that I tend to succumb to. I know who I am and what I'm about, so it helps me aspire to get back to that level. And that means that we have to spend some time crafting and creating a message to ourselves, for ourselves, about who we are, what we're about, and what our standard is. So I think the question becomes, what is the difference between a code, per se, and values? Right? Because it's very easy to say, okay, I get what a code is. It's just having values for myself. But I would argue that there's a pretty decent difference between those. So, Dan, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. What do you think that difference might be?
That's an interesting question. The code is a really fleshed out version of your values in terms of it becomes very specific about very specific things. And we can maybe get into our individual codes later to give guys some examples. But I know that I have my values and they're very broad. They're very, very, very thick stroke kind of things. And then the code gets very specific in very different areas of life. So, I'm looking at the code that I wrote for myself right now. The first line is, my physical health is key to all aspects of my life. I will care for my body so that it can care for me and those around me. That's definitely not a value. A value could be, I value health and fitness, but the code gets very specific about how I value that, how I flesh that out, and how I can determine whether I'm meeting that criteria or not.
Yeah. I know it's a tough question, but you nail it. There's specificity there, right? When you have a code, it's something that's clearly outlined, clearly defined. Because values can kind of just be out there in the ether. It's like, oh, I'm a good person. I'm a person who believes in God. I work very hard. These are ideals that we think about ourselves. A code is something that's written down. It's solid. It's tangible. It's something that we can reference often. It's something that when you look at it, it speaks to you. I think that's one thing that a lot of guys get lost on is if you have this ideal that you're trying to hold yourself up to that can be really high up there, that whatever that ideal is, it has to speak to you. When you read that, it has to move you in such a way that it's going to drive you to action. Because if we are not called or compelled to act, oftentimes we don't. We find ourselves kind of going back into the morass of life and playing too many video games and eating too many cookies and drinking too much on the weekend simply because nothing's calling out to us.
That kind of answers the question of why build the code. The code gives us the definition of our values is the way I'm going to put it. It helps us define exactly what those broad strokes that we've identified as these are the values in life that I want to adhere to. The code allows us to really get that measuring stick and saying, am I meeting that true definition of my value? Am I, it is a go, no go kind of thing. It's very clear on whether you're pulling your weight in that area or not. And that to me is the value in a code versus just a list of values in life that I aspire to.
No, exactly. So I think we've done a pretty good job of summing up what a code is and honestly why we need one, right? Mm-hmm. So the question then becomes, where do we start to go to create one? How does that work? Like, how do we do that?
Well, I think that every guy comes about this a little bit differently. And, depending on your journey, depending on the tools that you're using, I can tell you how I created mine, and then we can talk about how maybe that is applicable to a lot of different guys. I started in this growth path 3 or 4 years ago, and for all intents and purposes, I thought values were enough. I'm a man of God. I'm a good husband. I'm a good father. Just general broad strokes. And I quickly realized that there was a whole lot of gray going on in life when I started to compare where I was at to to those values, rather. So I was comparing where I was at to the values that I had kind of listed as ones that I aspire to. And then I don't remember who it was or where it was, but I saw that somebody had written a personal code. And I went, okay, let me dig into that a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to tell guys is writing your own code is really hard. It is probably one of the hardest things that I've done, putting pen to paper, and I still don't think mine is 100% accurate to the man I want to be. I believe it very much to be a work in progress, to be a living document, something that I'm constantly tweaking and transcribing and fiddling with to really hone in on what I want it to be. But What I did do was take all of those values and start to flesh them out a little bit more. Okay, what does being a man of God mean to me? Because what it means to me may be different than what it means to Brad, right? Or Joe down the street. What does being a good father look like? What does being physically fit look like? What does being a provider for my family look like? What does being a good husband look like? And I started to flesh those things out a little bit. I tried to consolidate it as much as possible into items that were specific yet broad enough that they may cover multiple areas in my life, so that I didn't have, a 5-page document that I would have to reference. I really wanted 10 to 12 bullet points that encompassed my entire being that I was striving to be. And I've kind of gotten to that point. I'm looking at what I've got written right now. I actually have 8 points. I think that I need a couple more for a few different areas. But right now I've got about 8 points that encompass my entire life, and in terms of a very small, concise manner, tell me the man that I want to be and allow me to judge my actions against that goal. So curious to see how you went about it.
Everything you said there was awesome and on point, and actually relates a lot to kind of my thought process. The one area I want to pick out of what you said that really resonates when it comes to creating a code is the man that I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
That word want. I think one thing that a lot of guys get lost on is they're focused on the man that they should be, or the man that they could be, right? So a lot of times men will create ideals that don't necessarily speak to them. Like, you could look at your neighbor who is a total badass and say, man, he has got it figured out in his career. He's got a perfect yard. He's got a perfect wife. Those are things that I should have, but I don't. There's a big difference between that and when you really sit down with a man. If you're sitting around a campfire having those deep conversations that we can have and getting down to his soul, what speaks specifically to him. That want factor is what building a code is all about. What I want out of my life, yes, there are a ton of parallels to a lot of things you want out of your life. But what you want out of your life and what I want out of mine are distinct and unique to each of us. That's such a big component of the code, is it has to be something that you want to achieve. Yes, it's an ideal and what you should be and what you can be, but it really has to be focused on what you want. There's actually a conversation that some guys and I in our battle team, the Iron Council, are having about a certain individual who lists all these things about what he should be, but it sounds like a checklist. It doesn't seem personal. It doesn't seem like it's speaking to him on an individual level. So as a result, there's a little bit of wandering going on in his life because he doesn't necessarily know what he wants from himself. That's what a code is all about. It's about knowing who you are, what you want, and then putting a plan into action. So I was kind of much the same way when I created one. It was, we've talked a few times here about the main event where we all went and had some awesome conversations, and I really feel that it moved the needle for a lot of us on a personal level in so many ways. And I remember after that, I was feeling awesome and life was feeling good, and I was starting to put some things together. And I decided to put some pen to paper and really write down who I am and what I'm all about. Somebody up there had mentioned, we talked about visions, and visions and having a code there's some overlap there. There's a little bit of that. But it said it's something that I need to have on me that I can read every day. So I wanted to put together a code that I knew that I could read constantly, reflect upon constantly, and review myself against constantly. Like you said, it's hard. I put down some points and scratched some out and put some down and fleshed out some ideas. And then a couple days later, I realized what I'd put down wasn't necessarily who I was and what I wanted. But I came up with, it's 10. I actually have to check points that really just completely speak to me. They're not only just what I want to be, but it goes into detail about not only why that's what I want to be, but why I'm compelled to want to be that. Because I think that that's it's an element that I've touched on a few times while I've been talking just now, but it's something we can so easily lose sight of. Yes, it's something that we want to be, but it has to be buried within our souls, something that we have to want desperately. Yeah, I want to be able to bench press 315 pounds in the not too distant future. Is that part of a code? Does that speak to me? Does that really go pure to my soul? No. Yeah, of course I want to be healthy, and that's a part of it. My physical condition is a big component of that. But it's not something that is simply a nice to have. This is I want and need to have this for myself. So that was the foundation by which I started to build that. Is really spending some time thinking what I want, what speaks to my soul, what if I could open up to somebody sitting around a campfire having a really intimate personal conversation, where some of that vulnerability crap that we talk about comes out, that those little gateways into my soul are what a code is all about.
I really want to dig into those 3 words that you used: would, could, and want. The man that you, or should, I think was one of the words you used. Should, could, and want. The man you should be means that you're defining yourself by somebody else's expectation. You should, your wife thinks you should do this, you should be that. Your boss thinks you should be this, your parents think you should be that. Could is, I have the potential to be this person. I could be, I don't even know. I could be a thief. I could be a priest. I could be all of these things. But if I'm not bought into that and I don't view that as the man that I internally in my soul want to be, then neither of those 2 words should be in our vocabulary when we talk about our code. This is something where you have to take some time by yourself and really think about the man you want to be. You need to buy into this. You need to believe not only that the words in this code will make you a better man, but they define the man that you want to be, the man that you aspire to be. They define the man that in your soul is the one you want to present to the world. The woulds and the shoulds, or the coulds and the shoulds, need to disappear. Nobody else's opinion matters here. Nobody else's expectations matter here. Your potential in various areas of life don't matter as much here as opposed to what you want and desire to be.
That was really well put, man. That was good stuff. But that's what it's all about. Is you're not doing this for anybody else. You're not doing this for show. You're not providing and building and creating a code to impress anybody. This is something that's deeply personal. The one person that it should be speaking to is you. And so many guys, that's one topic it's probably an interesting one, is, and maybe we can get into this one down the road. It's why so many men feel so compelled to be this for everybody else, but they're not necessarily being true to themselves. They're not in integrity with that kind of man that they want to be. We've talked about integrity before, but I think too many men live for the ideal of others, and they're not really living for that ideal that's inside themselves. That's what a code is all about. It takes all that meandering and aimless wandering through life, all the weekends where you're not getting shit done, all the days where you look back and say, I didn't get a damn thing accomplished today. It's taking those and making those as no longer optional. Yeah, we all have bad days and we all slip up, but a man with a code has a purpose. He has a defined objective that he's striving for every single day, so that when he's having a bad day, he knows this is not who I am. This is not what I'm about. This is not who I'm striving to be. I'm going to get back on that wagon and get the hell after it tomorrow. Because meandering and aimless wandering and floating are no longer on the table, because he knows what he's about. He knows what he needs to do. And it's almost like a checks and balance, or a roadmap, if you will, to get yourself back on track when shit hits the fan.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about a code to me is it can be written in such a way where it's never achieved. It's always something that you can aspire to. It's always something that no matter the gains, you can still use it as a roadmap for where you want to be down the road. You can grow, you can improve, you can evolve as a man towards those different points in your code, but you'll never fully achieve that. And I think that's the purpose of the code, is to constantly give us something that not only allows us to judge our guidelines, but places that almost unattainable goal right out in front of us, that carrot on the stick, if you will, that allows us to just keep moving forward and improving and fostering good protocols in our life.
It's that ongoing. It's almost like you think of any fitness objective. We talk about fitness a lot. Like, if I were to ask you what is your overall long-term fitness objective, you might have a very clearly defined answer. It could be based on weight or body fat percentage or hitting a certain PR, or somebody who is striving for excellence when they realize, I've passed that threshold, I've passed that benchmark. What's next? What's beyond the horizon? That might not necessarily be able to be articulated or defined.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a code can be, is what's something that's just over the horizon that I know I can't necessarily define, but it's something that's pushing me and compelling me forward in a way that I'm not going to stop striving to achieve that at all. So when I look back, yeah, and what that means is with a code, as is the case with a lot of things, that it can evolve. You think about a vision, creating what you want to do and who you want to be in your life. It's not all that dissimilar of, here's where I expect myself to be. Here's what I want to accomplish. But 5-10 years down the road, a vision could change a little bit. Code really doesn't change because it's essentially just like you said, it's the ideal that's just over the horizon that I'm going to keep striving for. It's the carrot being dangled in front of the horse that I look at and I'm going to keep pushing forward to, knowing that if I keep striving to get there, that the man I become along the way is going to be phenomenal.
So in terms of writing your code or creating your code, I mentioned it before, but it's a hard process. And to me, it was a long process. The first step that I would recommend is that guys find some time by themselves. They find a way to get away for a weekend. They get an Airbnb, get a place, go camping, whatever, and have time where you can quietly sit down by yourself with no outside input. You don't have the kids or the wife or the job harassing you. You have this quiet time and you're able to really kind of journal and just identify who you want to be and define who you want to be. And then over time, we take those thoughts and ideas and we start to boil them down into some one-liners that really hit on different areas of life. So I know for me, I did a lot like what Brad did, where I kind of just wrote about who I want to be, what I want to be, what that looks like, defining that man. And then I started to take that and really boil it down. And I spent a weekend, a day and a half kind of by myself when my wife and my kids had gone away for the weekend. And I was able to really just define this area of expectations for myself, my personal code of conduct that explicitly stated who I wanted to be and who I aspired to be. So I'm curious, is your journey to that point kind of the same?
100%. It takes time. It's not something that comes immediately, but yeah, it was almost identical to your entire journey. I don't really know what else I have to add other than just a realization and recognition for guys that it's going to take time, and that's okay. All good things require effort. It's something that takes a lot of effort, but it's worth the price of admission.
And I will say this, Brad mentioned Jocko Willink's book, The Code. The code, the evaluation, the protocols, striving to become an eminently qualified human. It's a really easy read, and it's actually a very good tool to have by your side when you're going through this process. He does have some tips and tricks in there, or some guidance on how to kind of get your mindset right to go down this journey. And that definitely helped me in certain areas to identify ways to take this huge swath of information and start to boil it down into kind of a more direct path.
Yeah, it's a really easy read. It's only like 50 pages, and it's written in a style much like Discipline Equals Freedom, where they're not really 50 pages. So it's a quick read, but he presents the concepts in a way that really only Jocko can. Very succinctly and to the point and direct, but in a way that moves and inspires you. So yeah, much like Dan, I use that as a tool to help me with mine. He actually gives you a pretty good foundation of what a code can look like. and then gives you tips and tools as to how you can kind of customize that and make that your own. It's a helpful tool.
Absolutely.
I think another very useful tool when you are creating a code is you need to be doing something like this alone in a distraction-free location. Your phone should not be anywhere near the equation. A TV should not be either. This is something where you're going to be seeking and searching deep inside of your soul to understand who you are and what you're about on an intimately personal level that you think you know, but it requires that mindset, that primary soul focus on the objective at hand to really get down to the brass tacks. So I would encourage you. Oh, go ahead.
It will be uncomfortable. To really think about who you are versus who you want to be is not a comfortable situation. Even if you've been on a path for a while, to sit down and it's an admission of your shortcomings in a sense. And that can be tough for a lot of guys. It was tough for me. It was tough to sit down and be like, this is the guy I want to be. And now that I've got this written down, I have a clearly defined delta of where I am and where I want to be. And that can be a real, it can be a kick in the balls sometimes to some guys.
Yeah. We as men, we're very hard on ourselves. I think, as we talked about previously, there's a reason that suicide rates among men are so much higher is because so many men are way too critical of themselves. And it's very important to distinguish the fact that when you're creating a code, this is not a negative exercise. This isn't something to be like, man, I want to be this, and I've been a piece of shit my entire life. How am I ever going to get there? No. This is a clean slate. It's very important for us to not fall into the sunk cost fallacy of looking back on what we've been up to this point. This is a new beginning. This is turning the page on a new chapter of our lives. It is, I'm creating this today. I'm going to take steps starting today, starting now, to become that man. The man that I was in the past, he's gone. He's dead. He's in the past. The man that this code is outlining, that man is born today. It's a subtle yet absolutely critical mindset shift that we as men need to have because, as Dan and I both know, and as we've talked about, it's really, really, really easy to cross that line from being aspirational and being driven to be more to beating yourself up, feeling like a failure, and wanting to throw the towel in. And an exercise like this is not that. It is to make yourself better. Let's start today to become that man that you want to be. And here are the terms of engagement by which I'm going to get there.
Absolutely. So I cut you off there a little bit. You were giving some suggestions on writing it, but you kind of wrapped it up there.
I was mostly going to say if you have the opportunity, I would suggest putting yourself somewhere where you feel at home, whether that be the outdoors, whether that be in the den in your house, somewhere where you really feel at peace. It's really important to create a code somewhere where you feel, I don't want to use the word safe. The word safe is not right, but a place where you feel alive almost.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I encourage too is, Brad mentioned your phone shouldn't be involved in this. I highly encourage you to do this pen and paper. We are a technological society. We love our computers. We love our phones. We love our tablets. And you can transfer it to that once you're done. I'm looking at mine on a computer screen right now. But there's something, it's an overused term, but there's something a little more primal about having a pen and paper and writing it down and being able to scribble and cross things out and draw arrows and move things around and just be creative without the limitations of your technology. A pen and paper allow you to just brain dump and be creative and be mobile in terms of your thinking. And I highly encourage you to start there. Like I said, you can move it to electronics. Mine sits in electronics right now. And I think that's great. And it makes it easily accessible wherever I am. I don't have to have it written down I know guys who have it written down on an index card they keep in their wallet. After about a week, that would be destroyed on me. So I'm able to just see this wherever I want. But it had to start on pen and paper. It had to start in that little bit more creative, a little bit more primal or primitive mindset where I was just scribbling ideas down.
I guess the question becomes, Dan, we mentioned this earlier, so let's make sure you're still cool with this. Are you cool and comfortable with sharing your code?
Sure. I'm happy to share it. There's nothing in here that I wouldn't share. I've shared it with my wife. I've shared it with other people, and there's nothing super personal, but it does define me as a person, as a man. So here we go. Number one, My physical health is key to all aspects of my life. I will care for my body so it can care for me and those around me. Number 2, knowledge is power. I will continually strive to increase my knowledge base and sharpen my mental axe. Number 3, money and time are both finite. They will not be wasted. Number 4, growth is a requirement. Goals will be set and achieved. Number 5, I will be humble and work hard. Both are signs of a strong man. Number 6, I refuse to let emotions run my life. In all situations, I will strive to use the event plus reaction equals outcome model. Number 7, giving is better than receiving. I will serve others before myself and ensure their needs are my top priority. And number 8, I will protect those I love, emotionally, physically, and physically. Emotionally, fiscally, and physically. I will be ready for all scenarios and trained to keep that level of readiness. That's it.
Here's what's so cool about that. Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's very basic. And like I said earlier on, it's broad and the different lines might hit different areas in life, but it's very specific enough where I can have that kind of go, no go check on what I'm doing.
What I was going to say is what's so cool about that is as I've gotten to know you over the last couple of years, I feel like I know you to the point where it's obvious that speaks to you.
Yeah, it does. And it's funny, we were talking a little bit before we started recording about, some mindset situations that I was in. And it's funny how just reading this is helping me kind of take a look at what's been happening the last couple months and maybe reset a few things, because I haven't necessarily been completely adhering to this code. And that's probably why some of the mindset stuff that I'm going through right now is happening. It's because I'm not striving to be that man I want to be.
Going back to Jocko, it takes the wandering aimlessly element out of it, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So how about you? Are you willing to share yours or no?
Of course, man. If I'm putting you on the spot, I sure as hell am going to do the same, right? All right. Without further ado, here's mine. I take care of my physical health. I train to perform at my best when required. I am dangerous. I hunt and train jujitsu to protect my family and put existential fear into threats. I am fiscally responsible. I am free of debt. I invest. I provide. I am a man of faith. I follow my Savior Jesus Christ and emulate him. I reject fear. I do hard things and choose to stare down things that scare me. I am a man. I embrace my masculinity. I preside over my home. I am present. I focus on what matters. I embrace discomfort. I challenge the status quo and I don't rest on my laurels. I am a husband and father first. I live for and serve my family and I preside over them. I live in integrity. I am who I say I am. I do what I say I'll do.
So, much like what you said, knowing you over these years, that definitely speaks to the person you are and to the man that you are. So it is really interesting how and not only the man you are, but I know the man that you're trying to become and I don't want to use the word, but the demons that you're fighting or have fought and the hurdles that you're working to overcome. And they're succinctly talked about in that. So I think it's great. It's really interesting to me how every man is going to have a different personal code of conduct. And if you put the work in, it's going to speak to each man and speak to who they are, who they were, who they are going to be, and how it definitely concentrates on the man they don't want to go back to if they are on that journey.
That's powerful, man. Think about not wanting to go back to what you were before. And that, to be completely honest and transparent for a second, so much of why I wrote this, where I was in my headspace at the time of writing this, was very much focused on not reverting back, only moving forward. And it's something that I think about constantly. And that's something that all of us should be thinking about is, yes, it's aspirational. Yes, we should be pushing forward. But the concept of, I'm not looking back. I'm not going back to what I was. I'm done with that chapter of my life. That's also part of our code, is what can we look at in the rearview mirror that we're skewing and moving away from so that we can continually push forward toward our ideal. Thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah, same. All right. Anything else you want to talk about on this topic? I mean, I think we've done a pretty good job of covering the whys and the hows and giving some examples. So anything else?
There are probably some things that we can reference in the show notes that'll be of use. There are some, obviously, The Code by Jocko is a great read. There's some different podcasts that are worth listening to, and there are a few books that talk about, vision and creating who you are, and those things can also help. Because really it's getting yourself in the frame of mind to where you can articulate this in a way that speaks to you. And there could be no shortage of resources that will help with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the one thing I just want to reiterate a little bit, and I hit on it early on, is that the code is your guide. The code is the outline of the man you aspire to be, or what you want to be. It is not the list of actions that is going to get you there. That's something completely different that you have to sit down and work on. And we'll probably do an episode here fairly shortly on how to create a plan of action to get you there. It's called many different things in many different places. I'm trying not to use specific terms, but there's a plan of action concept that allows us to do tasks to get us to the point that's outlined in our code. But I think it's very important that we outline the code first and define the man that we aspire to be before we start to take lots of action. We also shouldn't be stuck in analysis paralysis where if we don't have a code, we don't take action. But having that code allows us to really hone in on the correct actions that we need to be taking. All right, Brad, as always, man, it was a great episode. It's always good to talk to you. I think the guys are going to get a lot out of this. I strongly suggest the guys hit us up on social media and talk about their codes, talk about any questions they got on creating a personal code. This is a strong tool in your journey to untame your masculinity. And I strongly encourage guys to write this down, even go to the point where you print it out on a nice piece of paper and frame it somewhere where you're going to see it all the time. Because it is, the tool itself is incredible whenever you're doubting yourself or whenever you're having, a down moment and you look at it and you go, okay, this is the man I'm working towards being, is what I'm doing right now, germane to that. So guys, please check us out on our social media. You can find all of them at the website, untamingmasculinity.com. There'll be show notes for this episode and all of our others there, as well as ways to get in touch with Brad and I. So we appreciate you guys listening. We ask that you give us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast player to help us get the word out to other men. That is one of the biggest things you can do in terms of paying back anything that you've learned here or thanking us. And if you don't like it, let us know there too. We need to know what's working for you guys and what's not, so that we can make sure that this platform is serving you. So with that, we thank you guys again for listening. Please make sure you come back next week, and we'll leave you with just one question. What are you doing to untame your masculinity?